It's dead. Yes. The nails are in the coffin.
Sheesh.
And there are plenty of members who are cheering our efforts on.
She showed up on the Michael Knowles show. Somebody in the little Daily Wire Boys faction that we actually haven't watched on here. And I haven't watched too much of Michael Knowles. So I'm sure Michael Knowles, I've seen a bit of it, okay amount of his content. He's a guy, but more or less he's going to be a little bit more favorable to Lauren Boebert's side. So I kind of want to see, when she's surrounded by, in an environment where she is with somebody who's like-minded, somebody who's going to not push back on her, but actually support her movement. Let's see if she kind of, loosens up a bit and lets some of her, let's see if we can glean any relevance from her. Yes? Hello. Any of her answers. So let's go.
Our friends over in the GOP might be able to figure out, sort of people who have been power in the GOP for a very long time might be able to figure out if they had an ounce of self-awareness, but they don't, so instead they're blaming Lauren Boebert. We have Lauren on the call. Lauren, thank you so much. I know you're very, very busy right now, but thank you for making time to come on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on, Michael.
So, Lauren, where does it all stand? We've given a recap of the speaker fight through
10 votes in, nobody.
On the show. Kevin McCarthy lost 3 rounds of voting 2 days ago. He lost 3 rounds of voting yesterday. You and those terrible, evil House Freedom Caucus.
I think that means he lost 4 more rounds today. So
you're not budging here. So what happens?
Well, let's begin at where it started. This started in the summer. We wanted to handle this privately and have a solution before January 3rd. These negotiations began in the summer, and they were dismissed because Kevin McCarthy thought he was going to have this massive red wave, and our votes did not matter. When he saw that the $300 million that he raised did not produce the red wave that he promised, he realized quickly he's going to need our votes. And so some concessions were put into play. It was very difficult to get them into play. It was difficult to get them approved with our rules process, the way Washington, D.C. operates and functions. We want to fundamentally change this town. It is broken. It is less popular with the American people than cockroaches. So we have to...
Okay, so off the bat, let's acknowledge here. Lauren Boebert is right. The way and the function, the way that the House functions and the way that the parties, more specifically, run each House is incredibly institutionalized. And is Boebert a vegan? No idea. Probably not, I would guess. But the thing that she's actually kind of right, and Matt Gaetz also has kind of been pushing for one of the some of the anti-corruption changes to the rules, along with a few small details and stuff like that. But either way, this is the part of this faction of the Republican Party that I would actually agree with. In terms of the way the parties in terms of the way the parties generally function and the way they run each house, it is incredibly difficult to have the actual members and of the House really be accountable to the will of the people to a degree, just because of the way committee seats work and kind of the internal palace politics that kind of happens. A lot of horse trading and a lot of if you want to get on a committee where as a good example, if you want Katie Porter, who's really, really good at questioning and investigating financial institutions and kind of presenting that information in a hostile way to some of the people that she gets to call, Katie Porter might have to make some concessions. Katie Porter also doesn't have a lot of tenure in the House of Representatives, which is also a huge problem. A lot of our elected representatives in the House, their positions and their ability to influence the rest of the party and drive the narrative is based on tenure. So it's why you have people like Nancy Pelosi at the top of the Democratic Party, even though Nancy Pelosi is nowhere near in terms of popularity, at least among the base, not a strong figure. Nancy Pelosi will, she's never losing her primaries. And I mean, she's not going to be around much longer, I suppose, but clearly they haven't been able to beat her in a general either. Mainly that's due to gerrymandering that the Democrats participate in, which Republicans do the exact same thing. But the point being, the way these parties are run, the way they're organized, is really is very internalized and very warded off to members like Lauren Boebert, like Matt Gaetz, who, by the way, Matt Gaetz doesn't take PAC money, which is a good thing, whereas Kevin McCarthy absolutely takes PAC money. So, I'm not a big fan of either guy, but, one is at least ostensibly fighting some form of corruption. The other one is quite frankly, a ghoul of Washington with a lot of power. So in that case, we need to give them this credit that they have an understanding that the system is broken and the way our bodies function is skewed against regular people, certainly.
Get something right here, and we cannot go along with the status quo. Well, on January 2nd, two of my fellow colleagues and myself, Matt Gaetz, Scott Perry, we walked into Leader McCarthy's office after whipping votes all day long and handed him 218 votes. Mm-hmm. We said, here it is. Let's seal the deal. Here's some common sense issues that you can put forward, some promises that you can make, single member motion to vacate. So there is accountability on the third in line to the presidency of the United States. You cannot demand more responsibility and follow Nancy Pelosi's precedents of less accountability. So this is
in terms of that is essentially them asking for the ability to vote out McCarthy, or at the very least hold a vote to boot McCarthy as speaker at any point, which would, I mean, in the sense, I'm not sure if it would ever actually happen, but you gotta know that McCarthy does not want his party at any point to be able to hold votes of no confidence and boot his ass. Like it's essentially like, sure, you can have the position, but we're gonna hang a blade over you for the entire time and give us the ability to choose when to drop that sword. So like, it's, as your power as speaker is also incredibly stunted because you then can't leverage nearly as much because you're now weakened to quite a significant degree. You just always have kind of a gun in the back of your head.
Our check and balance on the speaker, and that was a priority for me personally, certainly, and for many others. But then things like bring the Texas border plan to the floor for a vote, bring a term limits bill to the floor for a vote. Any member who wants to reduce spending.
First one, the first one, dumb and not really all that meaningful. Second one, actually kind of agreed. Term limits would be good.
In an amendment, we'll make that amendment in order so we can bring it to the floor and have a vote. Earmarks, bring them to the floor individually for a vote. This is spending money that we do not have, so let's at least have a vote on it instead of packing it into a bill where we'd have no option to either swallow the whole thing say no way. These are things that we presented to him.
And
he
some of those
solicited a list
reasonable.
from us of committee assignments. All members provide committee assignment requests. We know where our talents and skills are best utilized, and we provided that list. Kevin McCarthy made a great argument saying, listen, the people in this group only want 2 committees. I need you spread out. I want you to have more influence. And we agreed with that. And we said, this is a time constraint on many of the members. It's a lot of responsibility, a lot of pressure, but we're willing to take that sacrifice and have these committee assignments that bear more pressure. And so we provided that to him. And then January 2nd, when
the committee assignments, actually really good asks. About 2 years ago, the squad and kind of squad adjacent folks were being pressured to do essentially what Lauren Boebert and her faction are doing now, for specifically a floor vote on Medicare for all, which would have failed. I think, especially now that we know, with a little bit of hindsight, and also it was kind of my assumption before, if you know you're going to lose that vote, not really worth it. It's not worth putting on a show for the American people for them to see something that's going to abjectly fail. What they're asking for, and what the squad I'm sure also asked for, were committee seats. Committee seats, very important, with an actual ability to affect legislation. Marjorie Taylor Greene wanted to be on the investigatory boards, meaning, you know, she can do all of her Hunter Biden, you know, dick looks as much as she wanted. That's kind of what she's signaled that she's looking forward to doing, is investigating Hunter Biden for, I don't know, having a big penis or something. I'm not sure. But committee seats, very useful, very reasonable asks for the most part. Again, they're not going to tell us kind of what's holding McCarthy up. I'm sure some of it could be, you know, some unreasonable asks. But so far, other than, like, you know, the 2 or 3 things that as a leftist I'm not in favor of, nonsense border patrol money for bullshit, like, I'm not in favor of that. But, you know, if we're talking rules changes, if we're talking earmarks changes, earmarks are how bills that are about, you know, maybe just funding the government, you end up earmarking a million other things for your locality just to kind of score a few points with the voters in your local area. It's also a carrot and stick situation where it's something you can offer a congressman, a senator, whatever, for their vote, because at the end of the day, they want to win their seat again. So, you know, if you give them money to build a nicer bridge, they can go home to their district or their state and say, hey, I built us this nice bridge, I gotta secure this nice bridge, or whatever it might be. But yeah, and those inevitably increase the price of bills. It's how, you know, how many little costs here and there ends up getting you to, like, the really big spending package at the end of last year that everyone voted on.
The table. Kevin McCarthy laughed us out of the room, said that it was a selfish wish list, and would not take the deal. Well, now here we stand, you know. Michael. I no longer have those 218 votes to provide to Kevin McCarthy. So it doesn't matter if I go to the floor today and vote for Kevin McCarthy, because there are now more than ever votes that he does not have to get to that speakership. This is very important to know. He walked out of that meeting and lied about what we requested. Trust is absolutely broken, if there was any to begin with. And this is a huge problem. We want unity in the Republican Party. And I believe now is the time to start seriously considering consensus candidates who will unify the Republican Party so we can get to work.
I do find it rich that she says consensus when she's got 20 people against the, like, 100 or something, like 200 votes that he's secured. But at the end of the day, this is how you play politics. We also have to remember that what their ability to pass anything at this point, you know, if they let McCarthy go through, guess what? The House can't pass anything. They can't. A Republican-held majority House can't pass anything, right? So whether McCarthy's sitting there or whether Trump's sitting there, who Gates actually, funnily enough, nominated, which I don't think anybody else got on board for that. But no matter who's in there, if the Republican Party holds a majority, there's almost no chance that they'll pass anything. So for McCarthy's side, you know, for McCarthy, he wants to be speaker. He wants to, from a personal ambition standpoint, he wants to be speaker. He wants to do all the speaker stuff, right? But all of these guys know that if they hold up the entire process, nothing happens. They can't pass anything. McCarthy just loses and gets embarrassed and looks like a fool. So, I mean, you know, at least from a, like, personal play, this is really, really strong. They have nothing to lose. They're not holding up anything. The country's not, you know, we're not at a time when it's like, hey, you need to do this to make sure that, you know, the country keeps functioning, or like a good example is like, we have a Republican held Senate now. We can pass, like, a federal abortion ban, right? But, like, they don't hold a majority in the Senate, which means even if they wanted to pass that, even if Lauren Boebert wants to pass her, like, little border funding thing, it's never going to get past the Senate. So for them, there's no stakes. For McCarthy, all of the stakes are all right here. They're all right here in the heart. Every day he has to wake up, he has to go in there and be embarrassed by his own party and his party members who constantly say that he's not in charge. And there's nothing worse as a leader, especially in politics, than having a outright revolt against your leadership in the public. Like, McCarthy looks incredibly weak here, and this will follow him if he gets into the speakership. He's fucked in the long run. He's pretty fucked in the short term. So, I mean, I love to see it, but man.
Work for the American people.
This is really important context, I think, because what you're saying is over the summer, Leader McCarthy just didn't think he needed you guys because there were supposed to be more Republicans in the House.
Liberty, I think also you have to figure eventually, because the way that the speaker vote works out, because the House speaker vote is a bit complicated in that it's not a vote of everybody in the House, right? The vote is counted and you need a majority of the voters in the House, meaning, you know, the House is 436 members, I believe, meaning if 10 people didn't show up, right? If 10 people don't show up tomorrow, don't vote at all, the entire threshold comes down. So, like, you know, you figure some of these Republicans, you know, like Lauren Boebert and such, they could conceivably not vote or vote present or vote, you know, not vote essentially, which would lower the threshold for who needs how many votes to become speaker and pass it along to the Democrats. Hakeem Jeffries conceivably could be speaker if they were to lower that threshold, since Democrats are pulling all of their voters in. It's very, very, very unlikely, but they also have a smoking gun at this point to say, like, look, we will stand by our values and you'll pay the price by letting Democrats win. And then we'll fundraise and tell our voters and every voter we can that you let Democrats win with a minority. And that's embarrassing. He's like, and you know, you do the power play, you know, you play Russian roulette, but fuck, dude, man, it is good positioning. I mean, again, I gotta respect it.
And so he would be able to win the speakership without having your votes along. Because of what happened, that turned out to be a bad bet. And when you make bad bets, you got to pay the price for those bad bets. And
True.
You bring up this other point, which is trust. And I think this is really important because a lot of this debate has focused on how on the issues, Kevin McCarthy is relatively pretty good. You know, we come from a world of John Boehners, so I guess Kevin McCarthy is more conservative than John Boehner. But what you're saying is, no, it's really about trust. When we're talking about leadership elections, we need to be able to trust the leader. And what you're saying is you don't think that Leader McCarthy has proven himself trustworthy.
Correct. And that's why we wanted the tools implemented to where maybe we don't need to trust him because the individual member is empowered.
Is that JFK back here? That looks like JFK. Okay.
Enough to get the job done and is not ruled by a dictator as speaker. This is not a kingdom that we live in. We don't anoint a king. I believe that this is how our founding fathers intended this process to work. Our vote is there to be debated, not just rubber stamped and cast to the biggest fundraiser. But you cannot have...
Not wrong. Although usually the speaker is whoever's the biggest fundraiser, mainly because they fundraise to then divvy up those funds to each House member, which then they turn in for their loyalty and votes.
Good faith negotiations where trust is absent. And so that's why motion to vacate was so important to me, because that is the check and balance on this position. If you break trust, if you don't do what you promised, well, buddy, you're out of there. And he has already shown he's not willing to do that. I still have not seen a public announcement of a single member motion to vacate. He's lying to the American
Lauren, for those listening who don't know what that is, what is a motion to vacate?
A motion to vacate gives us the opportunity to remove the speaker and have another vote for speaker if necessary. This is something that does not get used, but it's available. This is something Thomas Jefferson wrote and has been in effect for nearly 2 centuries. And Nancy Pelosi was the first speaker in history to modify that. She removed that individual empowerment from the member and said, you no longer have a say in this. I get to rule how I want.
Now, I'm not super familiar with the history of rules changes, but rules changes have happened through, I mean, they happened through voting. Like, House members had to vote to get rid of that ability. But again, when we kind of fast forward to modern day politics, what drives most modern politics is money, is fundraising. So, you know, when your top fundraiser is like, hey, you're going to vote for me for speaker or you're not going to get money to fund your campaign, if you'd like your job, you're going to play ball. And when that speaker goes, oh, by the way, I'm also going to defang you and make sure you don't have an ability to undermine me while I'm in power, you know, and you're going to do that, or guess what? You're not going to get funding for your campaign and you're going to be out of here by next time. We'll give money to somebody else who's going to play ball. Again, you got a seat to defend. So, I mean, I disagree fundamentally with the rules change. I believe AOC's also mentioned this. I've heard her name a little bit talking about some of this stuff and talking about her amenability to rules changes. Because at the end of the day, AOC and Lauren Boebert, as much as I don't like Lauren Boebert, her and AOC both are in the lane of outsider politics and uninstitutionalized politics. So both of them would absolutely, what's the word? Benefit from rules changes that free them up to push back against their party leaders a little bit more. So,
and you don't have a check, you don't have a balance. Kevin McCarthy wanted to leave that as Nancy Pelosi
financial
had it. There
metaphors.
were concessions. Okay. He got down to 50, he got down to 20, got down to 5. No, Thomas Jefferson wrote it as one member. Any one member can bring that motion to vacate the chair forward. And that is our accountability. This is something that was my red line. And I've only heard from a staff member who chased us out of the GOP conference and begged us to vote for Kevin McCarthy. We'll give you a single member motion to vacate. And I said, that's adorable. Where's Kevin saying it?
So
well,
I guess
that
this
is
is
him saying it,
Republicans
Lauren. I don't know if you know this. Most people communicate through staffers for the most part, but okay.
I know you're short on time. So what happens after all of this context? I mean, I think you've explained your position very, very well. I think that it is pretty clear that Leader McCarthy, he thought he had the votes and he didn't have the votes. And this actually, the same thing happened in 2015. Let's not forget, Kevin McCarthy was the heir apparent after John Boehner. He didn't have the votes, and that's how Paul Ryan emerged as the compromise candidate. So what happens? What could Kevin McCarthy come out and say right now?
Am I the only one who kind of forgot Paul Ryan existed? Like, I genuinely forgot Paul Ryan existed. Mainly because he fucking scooted the fuck out of there after they passed the tax cuts.
That would win over your votes and maybe the votes of your colleagues in the Freedom Caucus. Or if there's nothing that he could say, who would you support today? I know that this is a little bit in flux, but who would you support today to replace him?
Ooh, so I know they were talking about Ron Johnson being a alternative candidate, but apparently he's actually come out in support of McCarthy and said that that's who people should be voting for. So, you know, I mentioned earlier Gates floated Trump, which sure you're allowed. It's a free country, you're allowed, but you know, I will say a big problem for them is they don't have an alternative yet. I mean, you know, they can do this for weeks, months. We could not have a speaker in 6 months. It wouldn't really matter. So, I mean,
right. So we have been offering a menu of other candidates. I don't believe that my switching to Kevin McCarthy matters because there are so many who are solidly, Kevin, you can issue a public apology.
Like 20 and 19 all the people.
Rules. You can wear a straitjacket and just have a portrait that says that you're speaker and we get to run this place. And they're not going to vote for Kevin McCarthy.
Why did they go to a one shot then right back to it?
So at this point, we do have to start looking forward to other candidates. And I can name 200 who are potential candidates right out of the conference GOP. I'm excluding myself, so that's why that number is 200, and Kevin's excluded as well. But you know, this is something that we have to start talking about.
God, can you imagine Speaker of the House Lauren Boebert? That would actually kind of be amazing.
Presented Jim Jordan. We have presented Andy Biggs. We've presented Byron Donalds. I've heard Jim Banks' name.
I'm surprised they didn't. I'm surprised they didn't jump on Byron Donalds.
Maybe it's a Lee Zeldin who actually won us the majority. Without his efforts in New York running for governor, we wouldn't have the majority.
Also, keep in mind, Obama was like what I think a 2-term senator at most, possibly 1 term, when he then ran for president and won and became like president for 2 fucking terms. So like the way the House and the House and like the Senate work, like there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to have these I don't want to say mavericks, but maybe mavericks the word, but these mavericks, these rock stars, these real representatives of Americans in their party. There's no reason why they shouldn't be able to ascend the ladder. There is like, you know, a an argument for pragmatism, but I find pragmatism ends up just kind of being an excuse to not meet your voters where they are. Hi, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Hello? Hello? Okay. I'm going to put you over here. You go run around, do other stuff. Maybe when I go to grab water. Good? Okay, cool. When I go to grab something to drink. Now my shirt's all fucked up. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah. And maybe it's someone who is in the conference, like a Kevin Hern, who is currently chairman of the Republican Study Committee, which is the largest caucus in the Republican conference. He was unanimously elected with 173 votes to chair that committee, and he actually has a balanced budget that he wants to put on the floor, which is another thing that Kevin denied in our proposal on January 2nd. So maybe it's someone like that who already has the trust of the conference and can truly get to 218.
Before I let you go, Lauren, is the trust now just irreparably broken? That is to say, if Kevin McCarthy came out and issued a statement and said, okay, I'll give you single member motion to vacate, okay, I'll give you this, that, or the other thing. One, would that change your vote? And two, would that change enough votes to put him into the speakership? I know you've suggested maybe not, but just to be totally clear, are you saying that from the people you're talking to, McCarthy's speaker candidacy is actually dead?
It's dead, yes. The nails are in the coffin.
Sheesh.
And there are plenty of members who are cheering our efforts on, who are afraid of retribution. We were threatened in conference. It was a nightmare in there. We were threatened by steering committee members who actually assign committees to members of Congress that if we vote against Kevin at all, we will not receive committee assignments. And Kevin McCarthy.
So that's also the thing that they've been threatening them with, is just essentially being like, oh, you're not going to vote? Oh, okay, that's cool. Say goodbye to any committee assignments, which, I mean, if he gets in and he has a caucus of people that don't have committee assignments, he might as well be shooting himself in the fucking ankles for the next 2 years.
Affirmed that. He stood up and said, your district elects you, your conference elects what committee you are assigned to. And so trust is broken. As it stands for me, I am a no on Kevin. And there are too many others who are there who don't allow him to get to 218. He doesn't have the numbers, Michael.
Wow. That's really, really big. And I have to tell you, I know that people are pulling their hair out over this, especially in the...
Man, get fucked, Kevin McCarthy. Am I right? Like, Jesus. Get utterly fucking curb stomped. Yeah. We will kind of see how... the thing... the thing that they tell, at the end of all YouTube videos where they tell you to, click on one of these, things to watch more videos. Yeah, I've been meaning to film one of those. So that's what I was doing. I was just setting it up to